Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to the Secular Community Service during COVID panel. One of the things that's big in our community is our need and want to do others, especially incorporating our humanist values. And of course, with COVID-19 during the pandemic, we want to know and we want to see how we can keep each other safe and also continue to do the community service work that many of us do so well. And I am happy to introduce our panelists for this session. First, we are going to start with Will Jeudy, who is a board-certified family medicine doctor who practices urgent care full-time in the Houston, Texas area. Though a relative newcomer to the secular community, he jumped right into activism and became both the secretary of the Houston Oasis and the American Atheists Assistant State Director of Texas in December of 2018. Will has been featured as a guest on the Thinking Atheist podcast and on the Fifth Tuesday series radio program on WRFG in Atlanta. With those platforms, Will is shortly becoming a voice of activism in Houston and is actively trying to get stuff done while unifying the secular groups in the area. Next up, we have Tina Marshall, who is the lead organizer for our BlackNonbelievers affiliate group in Charlotte, North Carolina. A native of Sacramento, California, she lived and worked in the San Francisco, California area and New York City before settling down in Charlotte. There, she was a founding member of Sunday Assembly Charlotte, and in 2015, established the Charlotte affiliate of BlackNonbelievers. Tina additionally works very closely with Atheists Helping the Homeless Charlotte, which sets up monthly giveaways of meals, clothes, and toiletries to people experiencing homelessness. She is also active in racial justice, providing bail support and supplies for arrested protesters and volunteers with her local Democratic Party. She was also an MC for the first ever Women of Color Beyond Belief conference in 2019. Tina is the recipient of the 2020 Heart of Humanism Award, which is presented by Foundation Beyond Belief to individuals and organizations' extraordinary contributions to compassionate humanism. Finally, and last but certainly not least, we have Phil Session, who was born and raised just outside of Dallas, Texas, in two church homes, one Baptist and the other a Free Church of God in Christ. After getting involved with the secular community in 2013, his efforts centered around volunteerism and community service projects. That passion led him to organize and attend hundreds of volunteer activities in group-centered around non-belief in Austin and San Antonio over the past 7 years. Phil is the volunteer coordinator and vice president of the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas, also known as FACT. He is also the head organizer for Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless, currently serves on the boards of directors for both Foundation Beyond Belief and Recovering from Religion, and is the community service organizer for the atheist community of Austin. Phil previously served as the vice president for the ACA, was a co-host on the Atheist Experience, and served as a lay leader for the Atheist Humanist Meeting on Lackland Air Force Base. Please welcome our panelists for this discussion. Now, the first question I have I would like to start off with Will. And let's talk about COVID-19, its effects, and also vaccines and preparation for the future. I'd like to start off with Will, the doctor.
Thank you. Glad I could be here and help. I can spread some wisdom. So, I'm pretty much on the front lines with the COVID-19 situation, and I try to keep up. Me and another physician in our secular group do a weekly wrap-up or a weekly meeting and just kind of inform people on the latest on the COVID-19. So the question was just how to deal with COVID-19. Just practical things to take away is that COVID-19 is a contagious virus, and it's all about the particles coming out of a human's mouth and nose. That's how it is spread. So when you talk, when you laugh, when you breathe out, little droplets, microscopic droplets are coming out of your nose and mouth all the time. And if you have COVID-19 infection, those droplets have the viral particles in it. Now, these droplets are big enough so that gravity pulls them down eventually. They kind of flitter down with time, depending on the size of the particle, depending on the humidity of the air. There's a bunch of different factors. But the takeaway is when you have a human in front of you, it's the droplets coming out of their mouth and nose that matters. That's why masks absolutely work. Yes, it's not going to stop all the particles coming out of my nose and mouth, but it stops a bunch of them. If you have a mask, whatever particles do come out, some are going to be stopped by that mask. So if both people in an indoor room have masks, it really reduces the chance of spreading the virus. So it is a big deal. That's why physical distancing is a big deal, because the closer you are to somebody, the more particles you're kind of wash over your head and face. And again, that's the way you mostly get COVID-19, is with these particles in your face. You inhale it, goes into your nose, even into your eyes, and that's how you become infected. Less of important is surfaces. The virus tends not to do so well on surfaces, but it can. So hand washing, wiping down common areas does help, but the main thing is these droplets coming out of a person's mouth and nose. So that's kind of the biggest takeaway I want to give to you all, because once you understand that, then you know how to navigate this pandemic more safely. All right, if you're walking down the street, well, again, outdoors, when you're outside, there's wind. There's almost infinite amount of space where these droplets can kind of flitter out. So outdoors is safer than indoors. But even if you're outdoors and there's loud music and you're in someone's, like you're yelling in their ear, these particles are you're closer to that person. So it's not an absolute that outdoors is safe. It is safer though. And so again, the takeaway, if you're just walking down the street and you see somebody coming that does not have a mask, even though it's outdoors, especially if it's indoors, you kind of want to have a wider berth around this person, because again, there's more particles around them as they breathe, as they talk. So that's just the way I approach kind of navigating this pandemic. Jump to vaccines. Vaccines are becoming a thing now. Healthcare workers and people at high risk have been at the front of the lines so far. I've had my second vaccine. I had it on Monday, so as we speak, I should be getting to that 95% protection as far as antibodies go. I hate to predict the future, but I really think that I see inertia. I see more vaccines coming. So right now it's slim pickings. It's hard to get. Where do I get this vaccine? How do I get in line if I'm high risk, if I'm not? It's a little bit of a mess out there, but in the coming weeks, especially in the coming months, there's going to be more and more options, more vaccines coming down the pike, different companies. Pfizer and Moderna are the ones that have the vaccines out now. They're going to produce more, so be patient. Better times are coming. And the vaccines, when the vaccines were first being talked about the summer or so, I was kind of skeptical about it. Usually vaccines take 6, 8, 10 years to develop, and this is going to be ready in less than a year. So I was a little bit skeptical about that. But it's not a new technology, but it's a technology that we've gotten really good at as far as this mRNA. I can get kind of down in the weeds with it, but let me just give you some broad brushstrokes, and I can answer questions later if you want. I calmed down. My anxiety went down because understanding the way these vaccines have been developed, it makes sense. It makes sense that it happens so quickly and that they work so well. I don't think it's luck. A lot of hard work went into developing these vaccines that we have now, plus all the scientists coming out and vouching for it. That really put me at ease because, sure, I get it. Hey, there's politics, there's money, blah, blah, blah. They're doing this for this. The sheer number of professionals in the field vouching for it, getting out on national TV, and saying they're going to get it, saying they trust the science behind it, really calmed me down personally. So I absolutely get vaccine hesitancy and questioning. I mean, in our world, we have a lot of skeptics and questioning, which I embrace, I love. But again, I've kept up. I'll vouch for the vaccines. I've had my second vaccine and I haven't grown horns. So regular lay people, they have the advantage of, they don't have to get it now. They can wait a few months. They can see how the health professionals, how the hundreds of thousands, even millions of people who are going to get the vaccines this month and next, and see how they do. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'll just use this one for now. But I was going to say that what Will was saying about when you see other people, coughing or breathing, without a mask, stuff like that. Just last night, we were walking back to the hotel, and there was a gentleman in front of me that no mask on, and he did a sneeze. He was maybe 8 feet in front of me. I was walking with Alfred and Natasha, and I kind of stopped and I moved to the right just to kind of get out of the wind that was flying back at me because I didn't want any of that business. Good night. But yeah, keeping that distance, it's nice. I've liked the fact that there's been much more emphasis on washing your hands. That's something that should have been done in the first place a long time ago, just as a general rule of thumb. But it seems like people are taking that much more seriously, and I've enjoyed seeing that aspect of things. And even after this pandemic is over, I hope that really maintains your supermarkets sanitizing your carts and stuff like that, those basic things that you should be doing in the first place, not just because there's a pandemic going on. And so I really appreciate that. Was she able to get some audio?
Tina, how's your mic working now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
Oh, okay. So, in the Charlotte group, we've had to change the way we distribute especially our toiletries. We no longer do this food anymore because we used to have a hot breakfast that we would cook out there and then hand it out to everyone. We no longer do that, and the toiletries that we had were in different little bins where the guys would come down and they could just help themselves. We don't do that anymore. And what we do is that we just pre-pack a bag and just leave them on the table and let everybody go by and just pick a bag, and you just get what you get. It's unfortunate that we have to do it that way, but it is what it is. We certainly, we don't have the tables out there where we would interact with the folks. We don't do that either. Not everybody wants to wear a mask, and you can't make them do it. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tina. So the second question for everyone is, why is it important to continue community service during COVID-19? And I'll start with Phil on this one.
Yeah, when all this first started, it's last March of 2020, seems like so long ago, before all this happened, and you kind of started changing the way you had to think. But when things started ramping up in March, for Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless, we'd go out every month, first Sunday, boom, we're there, 9:30, doesn't matter what's going on, holidays, whatever, we're there. And it was one of the first times where we kind of had to talk to ourselves, the organizers there, to see okay, what are we planning to do? Because it was hard to get a hold of toilet paper. We had to pull some strings to get that together to have toilet paper to give. How were we going to change things? But we put together about 150, 160 bags to go out there. Our normal population that we serve is about 200 to 300. per month. But during late March, we started getting reports from folks out in Austin, like some of the constable's office and other things, talking about a lot of providers had stopped coming out there. A lot of the folks that provide food, that they just stopped. And for understandable reasons, for safety reasons, all these wonderful reasons that they would have to stop. But the effect was that this vulnerable population that we serve and see month after month was starting to get less resources. All of a sudden, it just bottomed out. And so on the first Sunday in April, we went out there and said, okay, let's see what it looks like. We went to our original area. It was a fraction of the people that we served was still there. Under 40 people were in there when it's usually over 200 within that area, and caused us to start asking questions like, okay, where the heck did everybody go? We started asking folks living out there, and they pointed us a couple blocks away to another area at San Marcos. When we went over there, we saw row after row of tent, people on the curb, sitting out there. And when you do this for long enough, you can estimate the size of people very quickly. We very quickly realized when we parked there, we were not going to have enough for everybody there. When we got out of the car and people started coming up, once one or two started coming up, it was this mad dash you saw from the population that was there, as if they knew that we had something and they were afraid of missing out. And that, what it looks like when somebody is lining up in front of you and they are scared to death that you're gonna run out of these bags at any moment. You're gonna run out, trying to get ahead, trying to reach out, and the look in people's eyes. People talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out online, stuff like that, but the FOMO that you saw with folks that were getting less resources than they have in a very long time was hard to see. And that next month, we were like, okay, we're putting out all the stops. We need all the food stuff we can get. We decided to do pre-packing and everything else, but the need did not go down just because the pandemic came. It just rose, especially for this population. The work that's done in the community does not cease. You have to adapt to what's going on, but it does not diminish that need. It made it that much worse. So for 2 months, almost no one came out there that used to help that population. And you saw it in the faces of everyone that we came in contact with when they're pleading for more things. So much adaptation we had to do, but there was no way we were not going to go out there, because those folks that know us, that have learned our names, you learn their stories, and you get to, be a part of their lives month after month as they go through their situation, getting their housing, trying to work through that process. It is something that does not diminish. And we were appreciated from coming out, and we heard that from several folks when we came out there, that they were appreciative that we took the time to do so, because so many didn't. Like I said, for good reasons, but that doesn't change their situation. It doesn't change the reality that they're facing. And so keep that in mind. Over the course of this pandemic, those needs are still out there, and they still need support.
Thank you, Phil. Tina, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, and certainly in Charlotte, the same thing, where on our Pfeiffer Street, where we would have on any given day, you have about 150 to 200 people out there, and that's who we would serve. It's risen because a tent city has now gone up. And that tent city just stretches across an area, a grassy area. It goes on for blocks. The thing about it is that it's not going to get any better. As people are being evicted, as people lose their homes, it's not going to get better. What we've tried to do is talk to folks about what they need in their tents, and trying to work with the people there directly. What do you need? What do you need? Plastic bins to keep the mice and the rodents out of our food that we do get. There's some groups that are out there that are trying to get just garbage cans, because they have nowhere to throw away their garbage. So we work with a lot of other groups in Charlotte. It's not only I mean, we're the only atheist group out there. There are other secular groups, and then there are the churches. But we all get along for the most part, and we try to coordinate to see who's going to bring who what. Um, you guys, it's not going to get any better anytime soon. I don't think so. So if you have an atheist helping the homeless in your particular city, sign up. If you don't have one, start one. Or if you want to join any other groups in your town, I mean, do it because the people. Um, it's very hard to see, very, very hard to see.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. Will, any final thoughts on that?
Yes, community service in these times is important. I mean, I'll see it in a different way. It's important for mental health. This is a global pandemic, and it's a huge stressor on society and on individuals. It's a huge disruption, and with that comes isolation, depression, anxiety, just the whole list of mental health issues. So I see community service. One, reach out to your fellow humanists, secular groups. See how they're doing. Just reach out, even if it's a Zoom meeting, even if it's a phone call. That helps kind of disrupt, that helps with the isolation. Another reason community service is important is because in times like this, when society is disrupted, what really helps mental health is to have a purpose, to be able to help others that are even less fortunate or going through more stressors than you. So if you have volunteer opportunities out there, clothing drives, food drives, ask people to volunteer, and again, you'd be surprised how much helping others will help the volunteers as well. So that's my take on the community service aspect.
Awesome. So real quick, we're going to get to the final question before we go to Q&A. What are some of the best safety practices for volunteers? And I think we touched on this before, but how can more people contribute to service organizations, and also what might be some of the best organizations they can contribute to? Let's start with Tina.
I just want to say one thing. With Atheists Helping the Homeless in Charlotte, I would say half of the volunteers were people over 50 and over 60. So we lost a lot of our volunteers because we're part of that, that crucial group that it's so easy for us to catch the COVID and die from it. So we lost a good half of our volunteers, maybe even more. That is one thing that I would say, that if you're a younger person without any pre-existing conditions, even though that apparently that doesn't mean anything, but if you're willing to take the risk, go out there, because most volunteer groups are made up of people, retired people. We have the time to do it, but now we can't get out there anymore. So if you're younger and you have the time, please jump in.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
So add some on into that particular question. Like as Tina was just saying, we had a lot of volunteers out there, especially in Austin, that were elder. And starting in March, when I made the event for April, like I didn't even post the location date. I put a note there that says, "Oh, you need to contact us so that we can go over a few things. Before, if you want to attend, you must contact us." So I talked to each individual that wants to come out, and we go over, what are their risk factors in their home life. There are some folks that, were not in the age bracket, the high-risk age bracket, but they live with someone who did. And to take that into your consideration and to have, that conversation, to say that if you come, you will wear a mask the entire time, that we will have gloves, we will have sanitizer, you'll be expected to do so. If you break a glove, we got 100 bajillion more. for you to rock and roll. Like, going over what those procedures are gonna be. But we used to have these grand, like maybe 16 tables of stuff we would sell. Like, we would have 20 to 30 volunteers. Like, it would just be this huge horde of folks, and coffee and hot chocolate and just doing the whole thing. But we had to change it up to say, okay, if we pre-pack, that'll be safer. We can do it that way. We'll do it in a location where we can limit the amount of volunteers that are there. So we limit it to just 10 and under, for example, to just keep people safe. That's all we needed. We just had to make those adaptations as we go on. And when we actually interacted with folks out there, rather than having them come into a single table, we would actually split up so that we're handing bags like 6 people, so that people are not gathering in one place closely trying to wait on a bag, for example, to try to spread folks out. Because when people are going towards one location, we try our best to try to, tell people to space out as they're going up. But it's like I mentioned before, that fear of missing out, the fear that it's going to run out, overrides a little bit of that safety component, and people try to get in closer to make sure they can get a bag just in case something runs out, because that is a reality of what can happen, where all of a sudden a provider's out of food or bags of assistance or whatever else, and everyone else that didn't get in close enough just missed out. So it's trying to weigh that, understand that reality, and try to adapt for it the best we can, so that we're respectful of the folks that we serve, our friends and neighbors out there experiencing homelessness, the best we can, while keeping them safe. Because the last thing we want to do is bring something out there to this vulnerable population in the first place, and having their safety in consideration too, let alone ourselves being out there interacting with people.
Thank you, Phil. Will?
Sure, and there is a way to be safe. Again, if you wear a mask, if I was out there, I'd probably recommend wearing a mask and a face shield. Goggles would be a little bit over. It would be another layer of protection, but a mask and a face shield. Is it worth you going out and volunteering? That's going to be your decision, but you're pretty protected with that gear, as well as a hand sanitizer. Still keep distance. If it's outside, I definitely give a green light to that. But again, you make your own decisions as far as if it's worth the risk or not. But yeah, better times are coming. And as far as the advice on where to give, who to spend your time or money to, if you don't know any local groups, I would reach out to national groups such as American Atheists. Reach out to BlackNonbelievers. They can point you in the right direction and let you know who in your area is worth your time and your money.
Thank you all so much. And just so everyone in the viewing audience can see, I have my mask right here. And of course, we are practicing safety and social distancing at this event itself because we do want to make sure that we continue to thrive and exist for years to come. So this concludes the panel session, but we have a few questions, and I'll start with one. I saw a comment that may have that started with, what about if you can't convince people? But what could be some of the things that as organizations can do to help encourage more people to volunteer? What could be some of the incentives involved in that? Who wants to start that first, Phil?
On that side, one thing that I find is effective is making sure, for folks that are out there doing the work already, to share those stories and talk, with folks in their community, because we've had a lot of folks that have come up after we post pictures, after we've changed and we talk about what our pre-packing, how we're doing that and everything else. People will still reach out to say, hey, I want to do something. So we have a few volunteers that'll be new for next month that I've already spoken to this month. But when they see the work that's being done, it incentivizes people to want to do something, because there's a lot of folks out there that want to do something and don't know necessarily how. And when you're providing those avenues and opportunities for people to do so, it's huge. It's for Foundation Beyond Belief has the Beyond Belief network. So for groups that are out there that are in it, if you do a certain amount of activities per year, you get incentives like free shirts, for example. So our Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless shirts actually came from that program. And the volunteers love them, that they wanted them, and every time we do an order, they're like, can I get one in my size, for anyone that we've missed, because it makes people feel like they belong. I guess that goes back to the mental health aspect that Will was talking about earlier. It makes them feel like, they have some efficacy in changing, the landscape of what they see out there in the world, and actually trying to, make a tangible impact on other people's lives in some meaningful way. And so many people want that and don't know how to kind of cross that threshold, or are scared to do so, don't have a group to do so. And so, looking in your local area, looking at Meetup or Facebook and looking for groups in an area that are actually providing those opportunities and being willing to step out there and try it and just see how it goes. You always have those first timers that are nervous and, I don't really know what to do. I want to help, but I don't want to get in the way. And we make sure we have a volunteer that can help them so that they feel comfortable. And once they have it, they're in it to win it at that point, and they're ready to rock and roll.
Thank you. Will?
Wow, I don't have too much to add to that. What was the question?
It was about how to incentivize or encourage people to volunteer,
That's right.
especially trying to, in these trying times, and how to continue to keep them encouraged and convince them.
Stories always help in this situation, positive stories. That's my recommendation. And also to be patient. It takes some time for people to kind of come on board. So a big dose of patience, as you know, Mandisa, really helps in these situations. But good stories, yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Tina?
Yeah, I don't know about the other cities, but in Charlotte, the people that we serve are probably about 95% African American. And when they come to the Atheists Helping the Homeless table, I think seeing a black face there is, you're setting an example. We don't have horns. No, we don't believe in God. They'll ask us questions, and and that's what I tell my folks, in the Black Nonbelievers of Charlotte. I just said, you know what? They just need to see us out there, and we can engage with the population because we speak the same language, and we understand, and we can joke, and we can fool around. That they might not necessarily be able to do with the non-Black atheists. And that's all.
Do we have any questions, maybe one question from the in-person audience? Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question for the doctor, Dr. Will. There are two sides to every story. And I'm confused about the virus. I've been confused for ever since it came out. Dr. Fauci, he hadn't seen a patient in several decades. He's more of an academic. And my question is, why were the other virologists who had experience, why were they censored and taken off of Facebook? And why was Fauci the only voice that we heard, on the news and things like that? I was just curious as to why people like Dr. Richard and several other virologists were censored when they had different methods and different ways to go about, approaching this. And I just didn't know why Fauci was the only person who was allowed to speak.
I can't really speak to who is censored and who is not. I'm just not privy to that. Yeah, I do watch news, the national news, once in a while. But I also have access to the medical literature, the conversations we're having amongst urgent care doctors, ER doctors, ICU nurses. There's a bunch of conversation among that. That's kind of where I glean a lot of my information about the pandemic, the virus, is from those forums that I have access to. So, yeah, Fauci is a voice, and he's the most famous voice. He's not the only one. Again, I don't know who has been censored, who the general public is not hearing from because of censorship. I'm sorry, I don't have that information. But I do know that it's Fauci, who is an infectious disease doctor. There's epidemiologists. There are other physicians. There's an array, a variety, a good diversity of physicians out there that are speaking their experience to the virus and the pandemic and the data that has been coming out. And I totally get that the data, the stuff, the things physicians were saying in March of 2020 was different than what we were saying in July, and it was different than when you're hearing this month. That's science. That's us learning about a new virus and getting information at a breakneck speed. So confusion, I absolutely get it. Again, I am privy to more kind of a different information. So I digest, I think, a different source of information. And I guess to your question, it depends on where you're getting your information from. I totally get that national news, whether it's TV or printed media or online, it can be weird. It can be manipulated. I totally get it. So it's tough. I don't know what sources you have in front of you, and I'm not going to say, oh yeah, this, that's where you need to get your news from. That's your own that's your personal decision. So, I mean, that's kind of an awkward way of saying I can't fully answer your question. I don't think Fauci's the only voice out there, but again, it depends on where you're getting this your news information from. Right. 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 Well, yeah, it's not a perfect, this is not a perfect, it's not, the answers we have right now are not perfect. The world is not perfect. To totally shut down society because of this viral pandemic, we can shut down the virus, but we're going to shut down society. There's a balance to there, and I totally get it. As a scientist, I would like to see more of a shutdown because I want the virus to be as low as possible, as little deaths as possible, as little suffering as possible. But I absolutely get, as you weigh more on shutdown, you're going to increase the stress on economics, on social isolation, on society. It's not an easy answer.
Okay, thank you all very, very much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Tina. Thank you all to everyone who attended this session. Again, the information is still ongoing, but we want to make sure everyone stays safe at the end of the day. So thank you all very much, and we will prepare for our next presenter.